Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Well, you are jumping into the deep end of the Stone Zone. And if you love politics and you love America, you're in the room where it happens. The smears against First Lady Melania Trump are one of the most outrageous things I've ever seen. I have known Melania Trump since 1999. I was working for Donald Trump in New York City when they first started dating. She is, without any question, one of the kindest, gentlest, most cultured first ladies in American history, an incredibly great mother, very protective of their young son until he was old enough to make his own decisions. He was allowed to avoid the glare of the public spotlight. Just one of the finest and most elegant first ladies in American history. But let's get to the real point here, and that is, no, she did not meet Donald Trump through Jeffrey Epstein. She has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. She was never at his home, never on his plane, never at his island. This is just a vicious, outrageous smear. But let's listen to the First Lady herself talk about it.
Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in detail in my book, Melania. The first time I crossed paths with Epstein was in the year 2000 at an event Donald and I attended together. At the time, I had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of his criminal undertakings. Numerous fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been circulating on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false.
This is absolutely true. If you go on the internet, there are all kinds of AI-created images of the First Lady nude. They are completely and totally false. She was a high-fashion model. There are some, I would say, sexy, risque, but not in any way lewd or pornographic photos of her, and like lingerie. But that's how she made a living, because she's an extraordinarily beautiful person, both inside and out. But I was there when they were dating. I was at numerous social functions with both of them. This idea that this is somehow connected to Jeffrey Epstein is just a complete and total fraud. Just to be absolutely clear, Donald Trump cut Jeffrey Epstein off in 2004 after Epstein made an indecent advance to an underage woman, Virginia Roberts, later Virginia Roberts Jeffrey, who was working in the spa at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump also was the only one to cooperate with Robert, later Jeffrey's lawyer, in their lawsuit against Epstein. We now know for a fact that Donald Trump called the Palm Beach city chief of police to complain about Epstein. And the irony here, of course, is that it's Bill and Hillary Clinton who socialized with Epstein. It's Bill and Hillary Clinton. Bill certainly visited his island multiple times. We know that from the sworn testimony of a number of the Epstein victims, including Virginia Roberts Jeffrey, who they would like us to believe committed suicide less than a year ago. I interviewed her very extensively for my book, The Clintons' War on Women, which, by the way, if you want to find the definitive account of Jeffrey Epstein and the Clintons, it's all there. The Clintons took millions of dollars from Epstein after he had been convicted of sex crimes in Florida. The Clintons continued to socialize with him. Jeffrey Epstein provided the seed capital for the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative. There's a foundation, a nonprofit called Terra Mar. Ghislaine Maxwell was the head of that. That was completely and totally funded by the Clinton Foundation. And although it was supposed to be an environmental nonprofit with a training program for interns, what it really was a grooming pool for Jeffrey Epstein, the epic pervert. So this is an irony, because we know from the FAA flight records, we know from the Little Black Book of Epstein's associates that his butler sold to a British tabloid prior to his death, that Bill and Hillary Clinton had an intimate relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Hillary Clinton is quoted as saying that her husband was on his plane a couple times for his charity. Now, I don't know who this charity woman is, but it seems to me that 27 times is more than a couple of times. If you want to look at public figures or those in American politics who are on Epstein's island, they're all Democrats. Former Governor Bill Richardson, former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell of Maine, Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton. Donald Trump was never on his island, was never in his New York home, went to a charitable function at his Palm Beach home on one occasion, was uncomfortable with the ratio of young men to women, left within 15 minutes, all documented in my book. But the media wants to keep this hoax alive, this idea that Donald Trump is somehow associated with Epstein or covering up the actions of Epstein. It was back in 2018 when I first recognized it, immediately after he was ignominiously fired by Donald Trump. Steve Bannon, according to the New York Post, was seen entering Epstein's palatial home in Manhattan. By the way, I think it is still the single most valuable piece of one-family housing, real estate in Manhattan. I knew right then that something was up. And of course, the subsequent Department of Justice email releases show that Steve Bannon, who would be going on his podcast, The War Room, by day, pretending to be for Donald Trump, was in fact denigrating Donald Trump in his intimate relationship with Epstein. He told Epstein that Trump should be removed from the presidency under the 25th Amendment. He called Trump stupid. When Epstein's non-prosecution agreement in Florida was upheld by the courts, Bannon was jubilant in the emails. These are all matters of public record. It is also interesting that after that he was coaching Epstein about his public image. He was seeking to coach him on what I think was an upcoming 60 Minutes interview, which was later canceled after Epstein was arrested in 2019. But it's very clear that they have a cozy relationship. I would call Bannon an Epstein enabler. I would call him an accomplice. It is all there in black and white. And then, of course, after Epstein was out of the picture, Bannon gravitated to the Chinese national Miles Guo. Now, they repositioned themselves as anti-communist party. Guo and Bannon pulled off a $1 billion fraud, a crypto fraud, a gold fraud, a stock fraud. There's at least $56 million, according to court records, flowed to Steve Bannon. That money came from the CCP. At his trial, when the Chinese national Miles Guo was asked under oath whether his money came from CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, or what his interrelationship was with a man named William G., he was basically Guo's handler, publicly identified by our intelligence services as an official in the Chinese Communist Party, Miles Guo pled the fifth 55 times. So I think it is abundantly clear that Steve Bannon was two-faced at a minimum, a major scamster. It is not incidental that Bannon pled guilty in New York State to embezzling $15 million from the Build the Wall Foundation, but then very strangely, he did no jail time. He also, when Miles Guo, his post-Epstein financial patron, was charged in a $1 billion fraud, Bannon was an unindicted co-conspirator in that case. Any good lawyer will tell you that that indicates that Bannon was an informant. It is interesting that Bannon, as well as former Mayor Eric Adams, used the same fixer lawyer, Arthur Adalia, and I think that is why Bannon escaped justice, at least this far. He and an associate, Boris Epstein, are now being sued in a crypto scam that they pulled off. We're going to be covering that case very, very closely. When we come back, we're going to talk about loopy Laura Loomer, because she used to be a friend of mine, but now I think she's completely and totally lost her mind. And she tried to pull a dirty trick last week, but I busted her hard. You see, you shouldn't mess with the OG. She's way out of her league, and I think increasingly dangerous to herself and others. Indisputable fact, she was institutionalized twice for mental instability under Florida's Baker Act. You can check that online yourself. And, maybe the third time's the charm. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone right here on the Red Apple Audio Network, and we are naming names. We'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a very, one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. Yes, I am in an epic Twitter war with loopy Laura Loomer. She calls herself an independent investigative journalist, but you see, independent investigative journalists are not paid to say certain things. And virtually every word she said is being paid for by some huge corporation, some private individual, and perhaps, who knows, perhaps some foreign government. Unless you disclose that and file, that is, of course, illegal. She's apoplectic because she tried to pull off a dirty trick last week. This is the oldest trick in the book. You know how when you were younger, you heard, through the grapevine, your girlfriend was going to break up with you, so you preemptively broke up with her first so that she couldn't say that she broke up with you. That's what she tried to pull. when she somehow got word to President Trump that Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was going to resign in protest over the president's decisions regarding Iran. She went online and posted on X, Tulsi Gabbard will resign or be fired today. Fortunately, the president reached out to me that very afternoon to ask me if I knew anything of it. I had spoken to Tulsi Gabbard that morning, and I knew she had no intention whatsoever in resigning. And to the claim that she was weak in her Senate testimony, unlike her deputy, Joe Kent, who said in his confirmation hearings that he believed that Iran was close to a nuclear weapon and that had to be stopped, Joe Kent resigned, quote unquote, in conscience from the administration when President Trump took action to stop that threat. That's not what Tulsi Gabbard did. Tulsi Gabbard testified for the Senate that her job was to give the president the best intelligence that she could gather, and that it was his job to make a decision, and he had decided that attacks on the regime were necessary. She didn't throw him under the bus. She didn't betray him. She did her job. Now, it's important to note that diversity of opinion in an administration is very important. When Richard Nixon was president, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, later a U.S. Senator, distinguished U.S. Senator from New York, worked in the Nixon White House. And he would clash with the Commerce Secretary George Mitchell, the Attorney General John Mitchell, and the Commerce Secretary George Shultz over civil rights. But when Nixon decided to desegregate the public schools, and by the way, it was Nixon, not Johnson, not Kennedy, who desegregated America's public schools, none of the three of them went out and held a press conference to say that they disagreed with their boss's decision. So Laura Loomer, who desperately wanted a full-out war, and is now, I term her with the Bushes and the Cheneys as a drooling neocon, was thwarted. The president realized that Tulsi Gabbard was not about to resign, and there was no reason whatsoever to terminate her. So this evil plan by the increasingly psychotic Laura Loomer was thwarted. I was the only one who campaigned for her in her 2 campaigns for Congress. The first one was valiant. She took on Lois Frankel, a Democrat incumbent in a heavily Democrat district. She ran a good race. The second race, in all honesty, my dog could have won. She raised $790,000, but none of that money was used to pay for radio commercials, cable commercials, television commercials, mailings, phone calls. None of that money went for voter contact. So I asked this question. I may ask it formally in a complaint to the Federal Election Commission. Laura, where did all that money go? We'll be right back in the Stone Zone. We'll be right back on the other side.
Is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
And you're back in the hottest political radio show in America today, the Stone Zone. You know, I think it's kind of funny when President Trump put this nation on a war footing and made it very clear that he would not tolerate the development of nuclear weapons by Iran. His critics on the left said he was deranged, that he was a warmonger, that he was mentally unstable, and they suggested he should be removed under the 25th Amendment of the Constitution. Then when he basically projected American power and the Iranians blinked, and agreed to come back to the table with a 10-point proposal, then they said, oh, Trump is weak, and he folded. These people could never be satisfied. If Donald Trump found a cure for cancer tomorrow, the headline would be, Trump puts oncologists out of work. The greatest single title that history can bestow is that of peacemaker. Now, in a major breakthrough for stability in the Middle East, President Trump had actually secured a 2-week ceasefire agreement with Iran, making a significant step towards forward under his longstanding peace through strength strategy. You see, unlike the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Obamas and the Bidens, Donald Trump's foreign policy does not go around the world looking for endless foreign wars to get into where we have no national interest. This is the strategy of peace through strength, a strategy embraced by Dwight Eisenhower and Ronald Reagan, not George Bush Sr. And Jr. This deal comes after intense back-channel diplomacy involving Pakistan's leadership, which both sides agreeing to pause hostilities temporarily. China also reportedly told Iran to get their act together and sign on to the ceasefire as well, showing how President Trump's economic pressure against China, he cut off their oil from Iran and Venezuela, got them to move forward with the peace process. Iran has reportedly accepted the terms, with its leadership signaling that safe passage through the Straits of Hormuz is possible during this 2-week window. That's progress. I'm kind of reminded of the situation in America in 1962 when the Russians mounted thermonuclear wars in China, and the world held their collective breath to see if we were headed to World War III. We stepped back from the brink then. We have stepped back from the brink here. The president said we're going to have a very successful agreement. It's going to be very good. Everything's going to work out very good, adding that Netanyahu is on board with the agreement. But subsequently, I saw a statement from the embattled Israeli leader who very soon goes to trial on epic corruption charges. Let me put it to you this way. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu makes Hillary Clinton look like Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm when it comes to corruption. And I think it was important to the American people to see that our foreign policy is not guided by anyone other than Donald Trump and implemented by his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. So it's not clear to me that Israel is on board, but the president makes the decision. Support from Israel is expected to come, but we shall see. The president emphasized that the U.S. military objectives had already been met, allowing America to negotiate from a position of undeniable strength. He also noted that a 10-point proposal from Iran is now serving as a foundation for what could become a lasting peace agreement. Fake news outlets like Reuters, the Associated Press, the New York Times, these, by the way, are not journalistic enterprises anymore. They may used to have been, but today they're just propaganda fronts for the hate Trump crowd. They put out a 10-point proposal that turned out to be a total fraud. It was not what the Iranians put in front of President Trump. The markets, of course, reacted immediately. Oil prices dropped sharply while stocks surged. Also, crypto and Bitcoin both went up significantly, reflecting renewed confidence in global stability. Talks between the United States and Iranian officials are set to begin Friday. But President Donald Trump, to show that he's serious, he sent J.D. Vance, the vice president, to lead those negotiations. J.D. Vance, there are some reports that he was a skeptic of the war, but that's unconfirmed and would fall under executive privilege. As I said earlier, it's important to have diversity of opinion within your administration, and we don't know what the advice that J.D. Vance gave the president was, or what Tulsi Gabbard gave to the president, for that matter. Talks between the U.S. and the Iranian officials will begin tomorrow with the goal of finalizing a long-term deal. The Panicans can now feel free to pipe down. No, this is not World War III. Sorry, Laura Loomer. This is not Iraq or Vietnam. President Trump is taking care of business, and the conflict with Iran will be concluded shortly, with Iran's ability to make nuclear weapons completely crippled, and the message being sent that any rogue extremist actor will be neutralized. I'm still astounded by the incredible technology used by our great military. U.S. forces successfully located a downed Air Force crew member in southern Iran using cutting-edge technology and coordinated rescue tactics. Under the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, America's military is back. I don't see any senior male officers wearing dresses or skirts. After an F-15 fighter jet was shot down, the surviving weapons systems officer, identified only as Dude 44 Bravo, activated Boeing's Combat Survivor Evader Locator, or CSEL, a secure device that transmits encrypted location signals without exposing them to the Iranians who were hunting for this downed airman. That signal helped narrow the search area, but what happened next highlights the major leap in U.S. intelligence power. According to reports, the CIA deployed a highly classified reconnaissance tool known as Ghost Murmur to pinpoint the exact location of the missing airman. The system reportedly uses advanced quantum magnetometacracy, I'm trying to read this story, combined with artificial intelligence to detect faint biological signs, down to something as subtle as a human heartbeat across vast and remote terrain. This was actually developed by Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works. The technology represents a new frontier in surveillance and rescue operations. Officials say it performed incredibly well in this sparse desert environment where low interference allowed for clearer detection. President Donald Trump praised the operation, calling it like finding a needle in a haystack, and credited the CIA with spotting the service member from as far away as 40 miles. While experts caution the system is not foolproof and works best in a low clutter type environment, its successful use marks a significant milestone for our American military. Shows how American military strength, technological innovation, and intelligence superiority can help protect our nation's heroes in an increasingly dangerous world. As the president said to me the Monday before last, I rebuilt our military in my first term, and now we are using it effectively in my second term. These are the types of technologies that our nation should be spending our military dollars to invest in, not futile nation-building exercises and military-industrial bloat. It was funny to watch the recent funeral of former Vice President Dick Cheney. Suddenly, the left is in love with Darth Vader. Dick Cheney was a traitor to this nation. He persuaded us to go to war with Iraq over the false claim that Iraq had been somehow involved in the 9/11 attack on America. That's entirely false. He also claimed that Iraq had nuclear material, specifically yellow cake uranium. Now, Dick Cheney, when he was vice president, he's a very interesting fellow. He was chosen by George W. Bush to head the search committee for a vice president. And Dick Cheney, who was a former congressman from Wyoming, a former Secretary of Defense, a former White House Chief of Staff, he searched high and low. And the guy he came up with for vice president was, well, Dick Cheney. Now, Dick Cheney was the head of the Halliburton Corporation at the time, giant defense contractor. So Dick Cheney put his interest in Halliburton into a blind trust. Of course, if he knew that the stock was in a blind trust, how blind could the trust be? The war in Iraq killed tens of thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, but it was based entirely on a lie. But it's very much like Lyndon Johnson in the war in Vietnam. He and Lady Bird had a lot of Bell helicopter stock, Sikorsky stock, General Dynamics stock. The Vietnam War was very, very, very profitable for old LBJ. And in this case, it's the exact same situation. Dick Cheney made literally billions of dollars. I should say Halliburton, the company that he headed, and by the way, he would return to after his vice presidency, made billions of dollars, and Dick Cheney made hundreds of millions of dollars. That is the outrage of the entire situation. Now, of course, the Cheneys, the Bushes, the Laura Loomers, they are apoplectic about the fact that Donald Trump has just averted a world war. This afternoon, President Donald Trump, in a tweet, attacked Alex Jones. He attacked Tucker Carlson. He attacked Megyn Kelly. I would have ignored them if it were up to me. In all truth, I think I see each of them very differently. Alex Jones, whatever you think of him, he was for Donald Trump in 2016 with his massive online conservative audience. As a Texan, there was huge pressure on him to be for Ted Cruz, but once I introduced him to Donald Trump online, he became a believer. He also strongly supported Donald Trump in 2020, and he supported him again in 2024. He was bankrupted, literally bankrupted, and they tried to cancel him entirely because of his support for Trump. Now, that is not to say that Alex Jones was ever a Trump sycophant. We've had him right here in the Stone Zone. And he has had disagreements with the president, specifically on the area of the COVID-19 vaccinations, safety and effectiveness. But last week, to my great disappointment, Alex Jones was among those who called on removing Trump under the 25th Amendment. I don't think that was a good idea, nor do I think Donald Trump had done anything to merit removal. Let me tell you how that works. Under the 25th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, if the vice president and a majority of the cabinet vote to remove the president from office, the president can either then leave office voluntarily or he can appeal that decision to both houses of Congress, where, of course, it would never, under any circumstances, pass. But the president lashed out at his critics today, and they're both feeling the heat. Alex Jones has asked me to go on his show tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm thinking about it. I might have to go there and kick his butt because I am disappointed in him. But the president, I think, very effectively brushing back the critics, all of whom said with great certainty that we were headed to World War III, which, of course, the president very, very skillfully avoided. In the meantime, they've determined that DeCarlos Brown, the man who was charged with first-degree murder after stabbing the Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska, has been let off scot-free. The suspect, DeCarlos Brown Jr., we all saw this shocking murder online, was charged with first-degree murder after allegedly stabbing Zarutska to death on a North Carolina train. I think everybody in America has seen that video. But he's now been deemed incapable to proceed to trial following a psychiatric evaluation. Court filings reveal that Brown remains in federal custody, delaying competency hearings and any path towards justice for the victim. If you saw this brutal crime, you would understand why I'm so upset about it. Prosecutors have agreed to continue the case while a separate federal psychiatric evaluation remains incomplete. This development has reignited online and radio outrage over a system that is clearly slanted against victims, particularly if their skin color happens to be white. Earlier this year, Brown, despite a lengthy criminal record, including armed robbery, felony larceny, breaking and entering, was actually released without bail. The problem in this country are not just violent criminals, but left-wing, liberal, activist judges who seem determined to put them back out on our streets. I'm in favor of justice for Zarutska, and I think DeCarlos Brown Jr. should go to trial, get a fair trial, and at a minimum, spend the rest of his life in prison. You're listening to The Stone Zone, the hottest political radio show in America today, and we'll be right back.
This is The Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
It is a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. This is The Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a very, one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get him his own. It's The Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into The Stone Zone. Well, Congressman Eric Swalwell from California is back in the news. You remember him. He was the member of the House Intelligence Committee who it turned out was having an affair with a communist Chinese spy known as Fang Fang. What we know definitively is that Swalwell penetrated Fang Fang, and Fang Fang penetrated Swalwell's office, placing staffers on the congressional staff of this member of the House Intelligence Committee who was entitled to classified information. The Inspector General of the Justice Department, or the Biden administration, later found that Swalwell and Adam Schiff, also known as Pencil Neck, had both, in violation of the law, leaked classified information in an effort to try to make Donald Trump look bad. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, are you awake? Why haven't Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell been charged? And of course, the second most famous thing Eric Swalwell is famous for is, breaking wind, I guess you would say, while being interviewed on CNN. Now there are mounting allegations casting an even darker cloud over Eric Swalwell as he attempts to run for governor of California. It's amazing to me that he's even allowed to run because under California state law, one must be a legal resident and have a home, or at least a domicile, in California. Eric Swalwell lives in Washington, D.C., says in his mortgage application, which is a matter of public record, that he's a D.C. resident. Joel Gilbert, the crusading investigative journalist, challenged Swalwell's position on the ballot, but just proving to you that Democrats have no interest in the law or the rules or the Constitution, repeatedly ruled that the fact that Swalwell didn't live in the state or didn't have a legal residence in the state would have no bearing, and he remains on the ballot. He's got a bigger problem now, though. Multiple former female staffers and interns reportedly are preparing to go public with claims of sexual misconduct by Eric Swalwell. According to Democrat activist Cheyenne Hunt, a shocking number of women have come forward describing what she characterizes as a pattern of predatory behavior and abuse of power from the California gubernatorial candidate Eric Swalwell. Hunt says these allegations, ranging from inappropriate messages to potentially criminal conduct, have long been an open secret in Washington, D.C. Some accusers claim Swalwell pursued young women in subordinate positions and required non-disclosure agreements to keep them silent. Others describe unwanted advances dating back years, suggesting a deeply troubling pattern rather than some isolated incident. Despite the seriousness of these claims, the media and the political establishment have allegedly looked the other way, happy to tolerate Swalwell's anti-social behavior because he was useful in their witch hunt against President Donald Trump. Swalwell previously, as I say, weathered a major scandal involving his ties to the suspected Chinese intelligence operate, the infamous Fang Fang. Let's just say it was Bang Bang with Fang Fang, showing his lack of judgment and the potential to be compromised. Yet he remained a prominent figure of Congress, and Nancy Pelosi refused to remove him from the House Intelligence Committee. Now, as Swalwell campaigns for the governorship of California, an office once held by the great Ronald Reagan, the aggrieved women are stepping out of the shadows and into the light. Swalwell's campaign has denied all of the allegations, calling them false and politically motivated. But the Democrats pushed the believe all women thing for years as they attempted to weaponize fake allegations to destroy Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and others. So now Swalwell may be hoisted on his own petard. He certainly deserves it. Trump administration is investigating Cassidy Hutchinson. Cassidy Hutchinson, you may famously, was a major witness for the January 6th committee. Glad to see this investigation because she specifically testified under oath that on January 5th, that the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, called Roger Stone and General Michael Flynn to find out what was going to happen on the 6th. Let me be as clear as I possibly can. I've never spoken to Mark Meadows. I've never communicated with him in any way other than once seeing him in the green room at Fox. So Cassidy Hutchinson perjured herself, later went back and tried to change her sworn testimony unsuccessfully, and now she should be charged with lying to Congress. Thank you for joining us today in the Stone Zone. God bless you until tomorrow. We'll be back. Godspeed.